Alright, what's up people? Rhyming. So I just finished reading Loco and Yokohama, and I'm gonna give my quick review. I got my notes here to keep me on track. Alright, first thing is a great book. What I loved about it was he lives in Japan and he is a gaijin. He's a foreigner, and you know, a lot of foreigners come out here and they talk about wanting to do things, but he did it. He wrote a book. So I give him 1,000,000,000 points for just the follow through. Second thing, it's good stories about teaching in Japan. So if you are interested in teaching in Japan, a lot of these stories you will experience firsthand. So it kind of gets you ready for, it's like a manual. Gets you ready for what's going to happen, or how the company's going to work, or how the teachers are going to do this, or how the students could do that. And it kind of gets you in the mindset of what you should be prepared for. Because a lot of these things in this book, companies seem to forget about them, or gloss over them, or they don't really bring it up. And you could even, a couple parts he's talking to his coordinator, or his boss, and his boss isn't really helping him, and Loco has to decide, should I tell him what's really going on, or should I just work it out myself? So it's interesting to read all that. Of course, in Loco fashion, raw and uncut. It's really, it is what it is, right down to how he felt about it, what he was thinking of doing, how it looked, which, you know, a lot of people who talk about teaching don't really get into the nitty-gritty for reasons of, you know, whatever reason, but it's very out there. So it's, you know, it's not PC'd up or Disney'd. It is what it is. Alright, some of the things, so it's a great book, alright? I think you should get it. Get 2 of them. Now there's some things that I didn't like. This is my own personal view. I gotta be balanced with it, you know? First, I'm a teacher. I've been teaching in Japan for like 8 years, so a lot of these stories, been there, done that. And a lot of those stories, I'm thinking I would have done it a little different way, or why did you do it this way, or da-da-da-da-da. And these, you know, it's his story, his life, and all that. But when I'm reading it, I'm thinking, well, when that happened to me, I did this. Problem solved. The end. So that kind of, you know, it's like watching a movie and you see them doing something. It's like, oh no, don't go in the room, don't go in the room, and they go in the room. It's like, why'd you go in the room like that? So I had that kind of feeling. The second thing, now this is, as I said in the first thing, it's you know, it's raw and uncut, and you get the real feelings. But it's kind of the world of Loco. So a lot of things are how he sees it, and how he perceives it, and how he feels. Which, you know, as a writer, and hearing a story, it's his story, so it should be that way. You know. But a lot of the thinking is this kind of, I guess, too much assuming. So a lot of times he might say something like, I think that they were thinking that, so then I did this. I thought that they were thinking that, so then I was doing that. This kind of dialogue that never happened. And, I mean, there's some books, other books that say, if you think it, it happens. So you kind of, I think he's going to hit me. And then he hits me. And then you're like, see, he hit me. I knew it. But then it's like, you probably had the, I want to be hit look on your face. Like, I'm pretty sure you can think of times in your life where you're just like thinking some thoughts like, oh, this isn't going to happen, and it didn't happen. And there's other times like, oh, I'm going to get this, and you got it. And if you ever connected the two, you really are in control of the vibes you push out. So a lot of the book is kind of like, these things are happening, and so I didn't like that too much. Because, yeah. And compared to the other book he wrote, I'm a Racist, these are 2 different books. 2 different books. I know they look the same, they're the same thickness, same artwork, but there really are 2 different books. Which, I read I'm a Racist first, so I got that kind of image, you know, and in this book, you know, he's just like, it would be like, did you ever see Arnold Schwarzenegger in some non-fighting movie where he's like the nanny, or he's like, oh, all right, let me clear that up. So you ever see any Arnold Schwarzenegger movies where he's like the big bad guy shooting people, pow 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 pow, I'll be back and all that stuff, right? So this kind of book right here. He's kicking ass in this book. This book is like when Arnold Schwarzenegger is like the nanny, or he's holding the baby and he's all, oh, what should I do? I know that's a bad voice, whatever, but it's like really watered down. And you know, I talked to him. He's like, he's going for a different market and etc. etc. But if anything, it should be this book came first, so you get the kind of, hey, look, it's Loco, and then, oh shit, look at this man, he's kicking ass, like in that order. But hey, whatever. All right. Okay, some takeaways. What I took away from the book, this book, Loco, is he's passionate about teaching. Like there's times he's talking about he got choked up with emotion and all that. And as I was saying in my take, I don't be getting all choked up in class about it, whatever, because you know I have my own reasons. But he was very passionate about a lot of things that happen in school, and I thought that was really touching, because we need, or students need, teachers that care. You know, I care in my own way, but I know there's a lot of teachers who don't care. They're just kind of like, I'm here to get a check, and then I'm going to go out and do this and da 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 da. But he was really in there trying to motivate, trying to teach them, trying to give 199%, trying to work with the teachers that were giving him flub and da 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 da. So yeah, so he's passionate. He's the teacher's teacher, right? It's a point of view you don't usually hear from people talking about teaching. Usually they're like ashamed. Sometimes I might be like, I'm just a teacher, but teachers are more than teachers. We're like the sculptors of young minds. You know, it's after we plant the seeds and then the trees grow and they blossom. So I think when I say it that way, it's a very important job. But other times, the things that we might be doing at the schools make us feel that we're not really teaching anything and it's just a waste of time to be there. Da, 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 da. But you know, he's telling it, and it's great to hear it. I would love to have every teacher write a book, not 300 and some pages of a book, but you know, write their own book, and then we have this super library, and we could have all these different thoughts about teaching and what have you. It's a good chance to walk in his shoes. So you're thinking, hey, I want to be a teacher in Japan. What's it like? You can ask questions, and people will tell you this, but he's actually, come on, you're right with him. So when he says, this happened, some kid punched me in the nuts. That's not verbatim, but that says something like that. You could probably feel, ooh. And then you could probably think, what would I do? Many of these people are like, but you can't smack the kids in Japan. So you got to think, what can you do to either avoid it or control it? Maybe you just come with a cup and you just, they're just like, pound, 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 pound. And you just like, and they're like, he must have balls of steel. Whatever, you got to figure it out. But reading the book, you kind of get yourself in the mind frame, you know? And the last point is, the stories are real. They might seem a little like, wow, he's just writing this just to write because he's a writer. But nah, I have seen it firsthand, or I have heard it from people that I can vouch for. So I've been there. So he's telling you as it is happening right from the front line. And again, the schools, like the companies that hire teachers, they don't really get into it. They might pussyfoot around it, you know, but they don't really, like he mentioned there that at one of his schools there was a girl giving blowjobs on the roof. Now I heard these kind of stories before. I have never seen this, and never happened at my schools, but I heard of them. But you think your company that hires you is going to be like, by the way, you got to be careful because it'll never come up. But when it does happen, it's like a big deal. So all these things should be in your brain so you can, because it's part of your job. You know, he talks about there's violent kids. What do? Do you let them beat up on the other kid, or do you intervene with your company telling you, don't intervene? Now it takes certain kinds of people to sit there and watch one student cut some other student without doing anything, following some orders. But then there's the twist. If you do intervene, you could lose your job. because that's just how it is. So you got to think about all these things. And in this book, he actually goes through them. So I think it's great. All right, some tips and advice. All right. Compared to the other book, as I said before, these are two different books. So if you love this book, it's a different kind of book. And if you love this book, it's a different kind of book. I would say it's the yin and the yang. Not so much, because it's still all Loco. It's not like he's writing a different tone and all that. He just kind of watered it down a little, or he just switched it up, you know? But they're two different books, so if you're buying one thinking whatever, just be aware of that. Some advice for this book, if you haven't read this book, right? Because a lot of people is like, hi, my name is Loco and I'm a racist. They already got the stank eye. He's a racist. And they couldn't read this, oh, he's a racist. And they just kept thinking, oh, he's a racist. And, you know, and it's hard to read a book if you're already predisposed of thinking something. It's kind of like Malcolm X's book, his autobiography. The first half of the book is like, da-da-da-da-da-da. And I remember I was in class and people were like, why do you gotta read this book? He doesn't like white people. Oh, I'm gonna tell the faculty. Like, they were so upset. And then on the other half of the book, he's all like, man, I made a mistake. I grew up. But they were too busy like, oh my gosh, he's saying this about me. You know, as if, anyway. So, you gotta have an open mind. You gotta, so that's if you read this book, you already know what I'm talking about. But if you haven't read this book, you know, it's still in this, but kind of brought down a couple notches. So what I suggest is you skip all the way to the end, and you start from, where was it? I highlighted it here. All right, so you start from 18, 19, 20, because it's a beautiful, what do you call it, recap. Now, of course, you haven't read the book yet, but he's just reflecting. There's a lot of reflection going on at the end of the book that kind of makes it all, oh, I get it now. But if your mind is all stuck on, then you probably won't make it to the end of the book. So just get to the end of the book and get where he ends up. And then, well, before you start reading the book, he has this thing where he does all these interludes in between sets of chapters. I believe it's every 3. All right? And it's like him going on the train and his experience and stuff. They're kind of like commercials because they're not really related to the story. Him being a teacher in the schools, just him going to school. So I would say read them all at once. But read those all at the end. You know? So read the first chapter. Read the last chapter first. Then read all the other chapters. And then read all the interludes at the end. That's my suggestion. And it'll give you a more focused thing. And last, I wrote it here, but just give it a chance. I know some people like, I don't read books. Give it a chance. Some people like, I didn't like the first book because you said, give it a chance. I know some people like, but it's 350 pages. Give it a chance. You don't got to play Xbox and PlayStation 5. I don't know if they're up to 5, maybe it's 4. You don't got to watch TV, especially if you're thinking about coming to Japan. This would be in your best interest because this is kind of the information that is not out there. I mean, he does have a blog, and there's like 1 million people on YouTube trying to make their videos, but reading is different from watching TV or watching a vlog or even doing a blog. It's a different way of learning. And I think that by reading the book, it will help you. So that's my review. I hope it made sense. And just one last point, because I thought this was interesting. Alright, so in his other book, right? I'm a Racist. You know, he got his profile. So here he is, looking all young like a spring chicken, right? But then by this book, he's all like, where you got it? Check. Where? He's all like, now I know these weren't written in, my thought was, he wrote this like 2 years ago, and this is like 2 years later. So within 2 years, the age, but you know, it's just a picture thing. Alright, so that's my review. Please check it out, review it if you already read it, because he needs all the reviews he can get. Support our writer. How many writers do you know? I know one. I'm a lyricist, so I'm a writer myself, you know. But anyway, thanks for watching. And Loco, I look forward to you writing my autobiography. Yeah, that would be cool. Me getting my own autobiography. Or my memoirs. But I'll probably write my own because, as I said, I'm a writer. Alright, anyway, thanks for watching. Peace, rhyming, shit.